Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly series of shirim on the Torah of the Goin and the Tzaddik Rav Yitzchak Maya Morgenstern Shlita, entering the Sea of Wisdom. And what we're going to be focused on today is a mimer from the Rebbe in Tafshin Samech Vav with regards to Parshas Vayera. The avoid of Shoivavim, the avoida of connecting oneself to the aside of something and being mevarer, clarifying things to the depth of the matter, for the Rebbe is fundamentally dependent upon the way a person chooses to see other Yidden in this world. In the end of the day, after all is said and done with regards to the zichuch of the midos that we can engage in, the rectification of our own character traits and our own avodas Hashem, in the end of the day, one of the fundamental points of identification of whether I am in a derech of holiness or a derech of yeshus is how I look at other yidden, how I look at other people. Very much like the Baal Tanya points out in Parak Lamed Beis in Tanya, the Lev HaTanya, that the marker of Avodas Hashem is the ability to love another yid as if him and I are part and parcel of the same neshama. That when a person is able to minimize the focus on chitzonius, on gashmius, when a person is able to minimize the focus on their own subjectivity, and one is able to open themselves up to the recognition that every neshama is rooted in the same place, at that point the person begins to understand v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And the secret of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, the secret of loving another yid like oneself, the secret of being able to look at another person from eyes of positivity as opposed to eyes of judgment, is not only an ethical or moral thing that a person should do because it's good to love other yidden, but in truth, when a person comes to find the uncovered goodness within another Jew, when a person comes to identify the fact that just as I am living in this world, so too they are living in this world, not only am I engaged in a healthy psychological or emotional social gesture, but I am tapping into the deepest spiritual possibility imaginable. By uncovering the light of another Jew, by uncovering the ability to judge another person favorably, to look at another person's experiences, and instead of thinking with Lashon Hara, to think with eyes of positive judgment, I am tapping into the biggest place of yichud. When Rabbi Akiva says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha zeh klal gadol b'Torah," he's not just saying that it's nice to be nice to other Jews, it's good to do something good, but rather when I learn to look at another Jew with eyes of positivity, when I learn the secrets of yichud that enable me to see Hashem's presence so big, that I am able to now look at other people in a new way. This is the Iker Nekudas HaYichud. This is the Iker point of understanding the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in this world. Because when I can look at another person with eyes of compassion, what that means is I'm also living with a healthy sense of bittul. Every ounce of my frustrations, my difficulty, my judgment of another is rooted in my sense of yeshus, is rooted in my sense of egoism, and is rooted in my sense of individuality and singularity that cannot tolerate another person's presence. This is the source of anger, this is the source of frustration, and the source of lashon hara. Kina taif and kavod. When I look at another yid, and I feel that they are taking up my space, or that they can take my space because we're something separate, so then naturally my eyes and my language is going to be one of judgmentality. But when I'm able to open myself up to the fact that nobody can take anything from me because everything comes directly from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and each and every person has to live with their own bittul, with their own self-negation, which is the recognition that who I am has nothing to do with what I have done, but rather everything to do with who Hashem has made me. At that moment, I am able to accept myself and accept the room for other people as well. The Rebbe starts off this mimer by explaining that there are two ways of living in this world. There is a way of living with my eyes open, be'enayim psuchim, looking around at the world, seeing differentiation, seeing concealment, seeing other people getting in my way, seeing the pettiness in other people, the eyes of lashon hara v'chulei v'chulei. And then there's stima de'einin mechaz yedei ha'alma. And then there's the closing of the eyes to the images of this world. And when a person closes their eyes and a person stops looking only at the chitzonius of the matter and allows themselves to contemplate the inner interiority of the matter, and begins, instead of seeing a body, to begin to see another neshama, and instead of seeing another neshama, begins to see the expansivity of the singular neshama, at that point a person begins to look at things differently. So with bittul, when I get out of my own way, when I stop making it about myself, I'm able to open myself up to the possibility of another yid. And when I can see another yid, and instead of being bothered or feeling arrogant or self-aggrandized as a result of seeing this person, each and every person I encounter in my life drives me towards another here, her tshuva. Because in truth, when I look at another person, I have to operate with the operating system that this person is functioning in a more clarified way than I am. If I see a person fall, I wouldn't have been able to handle myself in their scenarios. If I see a person stuck in something, at least they have the opportunity to do tshuva. I have to always be placing myself at the periphery, not as a result of smallness or lack of self-esteem or lack of self-confidence, God forbid, but a sense of lack of self-importance. I need to take myself seriously with strength and judge myself favorably, but I always have to hold myself to be periphery and not center, because in truth, the only thing that's center is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody is the center, because everybody is the center. And when I can come to realize that, I can let go of my arrogance, my kinatayv and kavod, and I can learn to be oisik and tshuva tamid. When I'm able to look at my perpetual growth in tshuva, the refinement that I have to process in my own experiences over and over, I can learn to open myself up to the avodah of another yid. And when I can open myself up to the avodah of another yid, I make myself a little bit less of the center. And this is the language of the Rebbe. V'Rabbeinu Baal Pri Haaretz. The Vitebsker said as follows: Koisev Devarim Charifim Biyoter. He writes very difficult things, Shekashal Aloisam Alaksav, that are difficult to bring out in writing. Shebeim Chalila Adam Mizga'e Belivo Aleza Yehudi. That if a person, God forbid, has any arrogance in their heart when it comes to looking at another Jew, no matter what they are, no matter who they are, no matter where they stand in the spiritual climate of all things, Yeda shehu nimshach mehara hasharashi shemistater b'karef adam. A person should be deeply aware that this negative perspective towards the other is rooted in that rooted place of hidden negativity that rests at the heart of the individual. And this is the self-interest and the arrogance that lies hidden in the heart that drives me to have arrogance in my relationship with another person. And I have to recognize and know the only reason that I haven't fallen into the places that my fellow has fallen into, the only reason I haven't become as stuck as that person I'm looking at and being miskaya over, is because Hashem hasn't placed me there. This is how Rav Usher Freud Schus Yagen Aleinu took so much from the Pri Haaretz, especially in this Nakuda, as the Rebbe has explained in the past, that the recognition is that it's only Hashem who protects me from myself. It's not my own protections of myself. And David Malka Mashiach is the one who teaches us this, as Chatasi Negdi Tamid. I have to be perpetually aware that I am no different. In fact, I am far worse than everybody whose circumstances appear to be worse than me. And it's only through the grace of God that I have the capacity to move forward. Mishum Hashem Yisbarach Hashem didn't place me there yet. That I have no right. It's impossible for me to judge my friend until I've come to their place, because if I were in their place, I would have fallen. And a person has to come to the recognition that I cannot break free from the nisyonos that I am experiencing if it is not for the grace of God that gives me the ability. And each and every person understands what this means. How often a person falls into these places. And a person has to hold in their minds that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu had placed me in the circumstances that the other person is placed in, this person that I have the tendency to judge unfavorably, had HaKadosh Baruch Hu created my life in such a way that I found myself there, I would not be able to persevere for even a moment. And then there's a sense of almost responsibility that so too am I stuck in these things. So too am I a product of this world. So too am I stuck in the human condition, just like my fellow is. And the only difference is that Hashem has decided in His infinite and unfathomable wisdom that this Jew needed that test and not me. The Yudi Acher bebechinas acheres. V'tzarich lahakir leida dechol b'nei Yisrael him leiv echad echad v'neshama achas. But in truth, the person has to recognize, like the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh teaches us over and over and over again, that we have to come to see that each and every one of us are singular in the neshama of Klal Yisrael. And Hashem doesn't simply want us to work on our own stuff. He wants us to be melamed zchus on others as well. And this is why in a time of Shovavim, when we recognize the deficiencies that each person experiences, we say apologetics in a language of plurality. Ashamnu. That any deficiency that an individual sees in another person, I have to feel that it's my job to be melamed zchus over here as well, because it's nogeya to me as well. And so too, that which is happening to the other is happening to me as well. And the only differentiation is not an essential one, but a circumstantial one. And that leads to a bittul. And only this recognition will bring a Jew to the true level of humility, and a healthy level of self-refinement and taking myself less seriously when I realize that all of my strengths are not my own. And this is the beginning of tshuva. That as long as a person does not find themselves with the humility of David, who was able to say that a person has to come to a place that I have absolutely no self-aggrandizement or sense of being better than any other neshama, no matter where they are. In that point, a person who can't live in that place doesn't have shaychus to the mitzvah of tshuva. The ikar avodas tshuva, that the essential work of tshuva of shovavim hu kishehi kishura l'shiflas haruach b'tachlis, when a person has minimized the grasp on their own power and refined themselves over and over to come to realize that my strengths are not my own. Not, God forbid, that I don't have strengths or that my strengths are not real, but that my strengths are not their own. The ikar shiflas b'bechina shavu ish tachtav, and the secret is shavu ish tachtav, that each person should always carry themselves with a shiflus and holding themselves a little bit lower than the level that they assume themselves to be, like Rabbi Nachman says, that a person should not have any arrogance or self-aggrandizement in relationship to another Jew simply because I appear to be more functional than they are spiritually or emotionally. And I have to spend a lot of time contemplating, how can I possibly have arrogance over someone else? When I recognize that there's no possible way that I would be able to stand in the face of the nisyonos that he has. How can one ever come? How can one ever come to think that they're better than another Jew? And the Rebbe continues that this is the secret of tshuva tamidis, of coming to recognize that Hashem is singular in the face of everybody, and this is the tamimus that is necessary. Makir mesmisha amr v'haya ha'olam. I come to recognize He who spoke and created the world. And when I see unity amongst other people, I stop looking with eyes of smallness. I stop trying to break down another person, and I begin to enter with a rachamim rabim, with a desire to judge that yid favorably, which enables me to judge myself favorably. That when a person realizes that I am who I am, not because of what I have done, but because of how Hashem has created me and how Hashem has given me the opportunity and the privilege to be where I'm at. And when I see somebody else who is functioning at a different level than I am, rather than falling into the natural proclivity to look at that person, ridicule them, and make myself feel better at their expense, I should be misoyer to tshuva when I see another yid. If they're struggling, then at least they have the opportunity for tshuva. And if I can't see how this yid who's in the lowest of the lowest of the lowest possible places, in 1 second they can change their mind and be higher in the highest places imaginable, then I'm not understanding the secret of yichud. And when a person is able to have this yichud of every single Jew coming together in the same space of avodah, then a person can begin the process of tshuva, be'ezras Hashem.